I'm here to talk about Victor Buono. Victor Buono played King Tut. King Tut was a villain created for the 60s Batman television series, and a lot of the villains that were created for the show, they appeared for one story, and that was kind of it. That was not the case for Egghead, because, Egghead's amazing, but it was also not the case for King Tut, because King Tut was also amazing. In fact, King Tut appeared the most out of the villains that was created for the show, and even appeared in more episodes of the 60s show than some villains that were from the comics, like Mr. Freeze and the Mad Hatter. The only four villains that appeared in more episodes in the 60s Batman were the four main villains from the series and the movie: Joker, Penguin, Catwoman, and Riddler. And so, yeah, and King Tut actually was the only villain outside of them to appear in all three seasons. So that really shows what a big impact King Tut left on the show, and how well liked he was. Heard that Victor Buono was really easy to work with. He was a lot of fun. He was having a lot of fun, and they had a lot of fun working with him. So they kept bringing him back, and that was great. And they're creating new villains. They experimented, and they got really talented actors to play the villains, but some of the villains, a little forgettable. Maybe some were boring, or others, like, the gimmick just wasn't that great. But King Tut was really one of the better inventions that they had for the show. He was hilarious. This villain who does have a dual identity, I guess, Two-Face, had that, but Two-Face was not on the show. So King Tut is this sort of humble, shy, professor guy, but when he gets knocked on the head, he believes he's the reincarnation of King Tut. And King Tut is a madman. If Arkham Asylum did exist in the show, because it doesn't. Not sure if Arkham Asylum was even a thing in the comics at the time, but King Tut's certainly a villain that belongs in Arkham Asylum. Or actually just deserves to be bonked back on the head, so he can go back to being the professor and, just make sure that nothing ever falls on his head ever, so he doesn't become bad. But I think this is a case where the writing was really good for King Tut. They actually had a backstory for him. The whole professor thing. So he's, arguably the most sympathetic villain they have on the show. And Mr. Freeze does get a bit of a sympathetic backstory, but he was technically already a bad guy before he got into an accident. So I mean, he's still sympathetic, but King Tut was actually a nice, humble man before he became bad. So arguably the most sympathetic villain that they had on the series, and that was really interesting. And so, in addition to the good writing, though, I think Victor Buono's performance really helped King Tut stand out. Did a great job at distinguishing the professor from the villain side. As the professor, more shy, humble, meek, well, as the villain, very braggy, full of life, very energetic, and wacky, and a lot of fun. And he is just a blast. He is great in all the episodes he appeared in. There's no such thing as a dull Keen episode, in my opinion. He is a delightful. I love his take on the character, and he is a very welcome addition to the Batman series and the Batman Rogues Gallery in general. Because of the series being done by Fox, there was kind of this thing where characters that are created for the show couldn't really appear in other stuff, so that was the case for a long time. So he was in the comics for a long time. There was a character called Maxi Zeus who has a similar gimmick where he's this guy that sort of believes he's this, powerful guy who and actually isn't. There is a belief that Maxi Zeus might have been inspired by King Tut. Maxi Zeus did come after King Tut, and not too long after, so he could possibly be, the comics version of King Tut, basically. And so, did King Tut ever make it into the comics? He eventually did, and they actually, I believe, named the character Victor Goodman, Victor as a tribute to Victor Buono, which I thought was great. And they had a storyline where Batman, the Riddler, yes, Batman had to work with the Riddler to solve the case of King Tut, and that was a really cool little storyline. And eventually King Tut, with the rights issues kind of working out, King Tut has been allowed to appear in other stuff, so he's made some cameos in, like, Lego Batman, Return of the Cape Crusaders. He actually did have a pretty important role in Batman vs. Two-Face, so if you're a big fan of King Tut, definitely see that movie, because what they do with him in that movie is great, and they have a they do a great job of making it seem like that version of the character. So I'm glad that King Tut's getting more attention. Now they can make action figures of him, and I do hope that King Tut does become a more regular member of the Rogues Gallery because he's so much fun. And we need more of these fun villains in Batman, not more of these, oh, they're serial killers, they're really creepy and dark and realistic. It's like, oh, no, 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 that's not what I go for Batman for. I mean, look at this. I don't think realistic serial killers when I look at this guy, Batman. I mean, it's Batman. He dresses like a bat. I don't need to see him going around fighting Jack the Ripper. Yes, that did happen. To be fair, that was actually a pretty good storyline. But I don't want that to be like the normal thing. I don't need Batman going against Jack the Ripper on a regular basis. I want to see Batman fight King Tut. King Tut is great, and I think his long-lasting success and popularity is thanks to Victor Buono because he did an amazing job in the role. So you have any fond memories of Victor Buono as King Tut or any of his other roles? I'm not really familiar with his other work, but if you see him in anything else, feel free to mention in the comments. And also feel free to mention if you think King Tut should show up more often or if he should just kind of be, like for certain occasions or cameos or, just in campy versions of Batman. I would love to see him in other versions. I mean, Maxi Zeus was in more serious versions of Batman, like even in the animated series, so I think King Tut could work too. And Maxi Zeus is pretty cool, but I don't know if he can beat King Tut. King Tut's pretty amazing.